We've all got a life story, right? It's all those moments, the choices we made, the chances we took. That's what makes us who we are. But have you ever tried to actually, tell that story? It can be surprisingly hard to find the right words. So today, we're going to dive into this amazing framework that can help you not just tell your story, but actually get it in a way you never have before.
So let's just start with that. Seriously, take a moment. What is the story of your life? If someone asked you right now, what would you say? Where would you even start? It's a huge question, right? Kind of overwhelming.
And hey, if that question feels overwhelming, you are definitely not alone. The writer Paula E Simeon, wow, she just nails this feeling. She talks about how 20 years ago, she sat down to write her story and could only get out a single paragraph. Just one. She was just so shocked, so unable to make sense of how her life had been, completely turned upside down. And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? How do we take all these things that have happened to us and turn them into a story that actually means something?
All right, so let's get into the good stuff, because there is a way through this. Think of it like a toolkit for exactly this problem. We're going to be looking at a framework from an author named Bruce Feiler, and it's basically a template that anyone, and I mean anyone, can use to map out their life, start seeing the patterns, and, finally find the meaning in it all.
So step one is super simple. You're just going to map out your personal landscape. And don't freak out, you're not writing a novel here. Just think about the key landmarks. What were your high points? Those moments of total joy, the big wins. And then, what were the low points? The really tough times, the struggles, the losses. And finally, what were the turning points? Those moments that were like a fork in the road, where your life just went in a totally different direction.
Okay, so now you've got this map, right? A list of highs, lows, and turning points. But a list of events is, well, it's just a list. The real magic is figuring out what it all means. So how do we do that? How do we read this map we just made? Well, this framework has this really cool, really simple tool for that. It's called the ABCs of meaning.
First up is A for agency. And this is a big one. It's all about realizing the power you have to actually shape your own story. Just think for a second. When was the time you made a really brave choice or took a huge risk? Or maybe you just took a bad situation and turned it around. That's agency. It's that part of your story where you can look back and say, yeah, I did that. I made that happen.
Then we have B for belonging. Because let's be real, nobody's story happens in a bubble, right? This is all about the people in your life, your family, your best friends, that team you are on, that community you are a part of. They're not just side characters in your story, they're the whole support system, the whole context for everything that happens. And last but not least, C is for cause. This is your why. It's that purpose that's bigger than just you. For you, it might be raising your kids or getting really, really good at your job or fighting for something you believe in or serving your community. It's that mission, that thing that pulls you forward and gives your whole story a point.
Okay, so we've got the ABCs. But what about all the plot twists? Because we all know life is not a straight line. It's messy. It's full of disruptions. And this framework has a fantastic name for the huge ones. It calls them lifequakes. And that's exactly what they are, right? They're the events that don't just change your direction. They shake your entire world.
This is so important. That same writer, Paula-Simeon, she realized something profound. She used to think that her non-linear life, all the twists and turns, was some kind of personal failure. But it turns out, that's just normal. That's how most people's lives are. They zig, they zag, they go in directions you never expected. So if your life hasn't been a perfect straight line, well, congratulations. You're just like the rest of us.
So, to start making sense of these big life quakes, it really helps to split them into two camps. First, you've got your voluntary disruptions. These are the ones you choose, right? Like deciding to quit your job or move to a new city. That's your agency at work. But then you have the involuntary ones, the stuff that just happens to you. Getting sick, getting laid off, and just knowing the difference. Just being able to separate what you chose from what you couldn't control, that's a huge step towards healing.
And getting through one of these life quakes, it's not a quick fix. It's a whole process. And there are actually 3 pretty predictable stages. First, there's what's called the long goodbye. That's when you're slowly letting go of how things used to be. Then you hit the messy middle. And yeah, it's messy, it's confusing, you're trying to figure things out. And then finally, you get to the new beginning, where you actually start building what comes next. Just knowing these stages exist can make the whole thing feel a little less chaotic. And all of this leads to what I think is the most powerful part of this whole idea. Once you've mapped everything out and you understand the disruptions, you get to a point where you have to make a choice, a really fundamental choice about who you are in your own story.
You can see yourself as the victim.
feeling stuck, powerless, where your story is all about the bad things that happened to you. Or you can choose to be the hero of your story. Now, being the hero doesn't mean you pretend you weren't hurt or that you didn't struggle. Not at all. It means you make the choice to learn from all of it, to grow from it, and to actually become stronger because of what you went through.
And this is what that choice can do. Let's go back to Paula-Simeon, who started out so lost for words she could barely write a paragraph. By using these ideas, she completely changed her perspective. Those painful memories didn't just vanish, but she reframed them. And now, she sees them as the source of her strength, the very thing that made her so resilient.
And that's really the core of it all. The story you tell yourself about your life, it's so much more than just a list of things that happened. It's literally the blueprint for who you are right now and who you're going to become. When you start telling your own story through this lens, through agency, belonging, and cause, you stop just remembering your life. You start actively creating it. So I want to leave you with one last big question to think about. If we know this is true, that life is messy and nonlinear and full of these life quakes, then how do we prepare our kids for that reality? What tools can we give the next generation so they don't just survive their stories, but so they can thrive in them, in all their beautiful, messy, unpredictable glory?